The article I read was an experiment titled Food Avoidance Learning based on entirely voluntary wheel running in laboratory mice. Introduction and research question. This experiment studies the idea of food avoidance learning within laboratory mice. Previous experiments have been conducted on the association between snacks and wheel running in mice. However, prior experiments conditioned them to closed wheels 2 days prior so that the mice would be conditioned to using the wheel. Wheel running has been used as both a reinforcer and aversive agent. Mice actually find voluntary wheel running pleasing, so it has helped conduct conditioning experiments in the past. The research questions whether the intrinsic capacity for running on the wheel establishes food avoidance within the mice. Methods. There were 16 male mice, all 8 weeks of age for the subjects. The apparatus used, the mice were kept in 16 plastic storage containers and 8 pet cages with a plastic activity wheel used to conduct the research. Cheese cubes and raisins were used as the CS plus and the CS minus. The mice were also split into 2 groups, one group being the fam, who was familiar with the wheel, and the unfam, who wasn't familiar with the wheel. The mice were given a 15-minute access time to either the cheese or the raisins, depending on which group they were in. The access to one of the 2 snacks was always followed by a 60-minute period in the pet cage with access to the activity wheel, while access to the other snack was followed by returning to their home cage. The snack that preceded the access to the pet cage was counterbalanced between the groups as shown in Table 1. For one group, the intake of cheese meant no 60-minute access to the pet cage with the activity wheel, while on the other hand, the intake of raisins meant access, and vice versa with the other group. Now the results. As we take a look at the graph on the left, you will see some interesting results. First, with the graph of mean snack intake for group FAM who was familiar with the activity wheel before the experiment was conducted. You will see that mice instinctively did not eat the CS plus, which was the snack paired with a 60-minute pet cage and activity wheel. On days where the CS plus was presented, the mean intake was substantially lower than the mean intake of the CS minus days of the same block schedule. Now for the graph of the group on FAM, mean snack intake, you will see the first half of the block, mean intake remained approximately the same for both CS plus and CS minus, up until about day 20 to 21. However, during the second half of the block, mean intake was once again substantially higher for the CS minus, which was on the unpaired stimulus. For the graph of the mean number of wheel turns on the bottom of this page, it shows that the group FAM overall has more wheel turns since those mice were already familiar with the activity wheel and were conditioned quicker. However, as group unfam began to condition around 19 days, shown on the graph, the amount of wheel turns between both groups began to grow about evenly. Overall, it took a few days for the mice to be comfortable with the snacks, which could be viewed as neophobia. However, as stated with the graphs, the consumption of the CS plus was low, so this associates with a conditioned response of avoidance. Now to the discussion. The major finding of this study is that the CFA based on voluntary running in open wheels is establishable in mice without pre-training or running in closed wheels before the experiment is conducted. The experiment suggests that the ability of running to establish food avoidance is intrinsic in the sense that it does not require an externally imposed prior experience of running in closed wheels. For the critical analysis, would the use of different mice merit different results? Do these results depend on the breed, gender, or age of the mice used in the lab? A good way of fixing this would be running an identical experiment with a variety of more mice with different ages, genders, and breeds. Also, could the facility where the mice are being tested change the results of this study? What if it was a larger space or had a different type of wheel in it. I know it might be hard to believe that the type of wheel could affect the results, but it is important to look into all factors. Also, if the time period of the testing was increased, would it change the results as well? Overall, I really enjoyed the study at hand and found it pretty fascinating. It works perfectly with what we are learning about in class in respect to classical conditioning and behavior change with the use of conditioned stimuli.